Today I want to share a tribute to my dad. I didn't get to grow up with my dad. I didn't even know his name until I was 30. And when I was in my 40s, I felt the freedom in my life, like I was in a good place to kind of confront the situation, and decided that I was going to step into the fear and look for my dad. So I did. Um, the first person I found, my dad has a rare name. So when I looked him up, there's only like 3 people with that name in the United States at that time. So I felt pretty confident contacting a man who lived in the area where I grew up, thinking that he was my father. So I sent him an email and he replied that no, he was not. He did ask for more information just to be completely sure, but he was too young and not in the right kind of place at the right time. So that was kind of devastating. I began to wonder if I was given a false name. So I decided to take a DNA test, build out my family tree on Ancestry. And while I waited, because at that time you take the test and it took, I don't know how long it took to come back. It felt like forever. I want to say a month, but may not have been that long. But in the in-between time between I sending the test in and getting the results, I built out my family tree. And when I got the results, so what you do is you make a kind of there's a term for it, but I would say it's almost like an experimental family tree. So you take the family tree, like I knew my mom's side, so I built that out. And then I took who I thought was my father and built out that side, and I branched up to his parents, and then my grandparents, and then as far up as I could. So I had enough information to do that just from looking at Ancestry and just knowing my dad's name. I'm not sure how I found his parents' name, but either way, that's what I did. And so when the results came back, it did align with my dad's side of the tree. I'm not sure what my closest match is or was. I could look it up. But anyway, it was enough verification for me to know that there was extremely high likelihood that this guy was my dad. So I wrote an email. Well, I already had the email because I sent it to the wrong guy first. I think it took me about a month to send it to the right guy because I knew that this was like the last chance, and I was afraid that it would be a no or there would be no answer. So I finally sent it off, and I made myself walk away from my computer, and I told myself he's probably not going to reply for like a week. That seems realistic because he's going to have to get over the shock of it, whatever he's going to have to go through before he can contact me back. So an hour later, I went and checked my email. So much for that feeling like I wasn't going to be obsessed by it. But I checked my email, and there was a reply, and he changed the subject line. I think it was Brianna, my name, looking for her father, and he changed it to, "Wow, I'm your dad." And in the email, he was just like, said he was so excited to hear from me, and he'd always thought about me and wondered about me, didn't know where I was, anything like that, and then asked if we could talk on the phone. So me being an introvert, I was thinking, okay, it might take him a week to reply. I didn't even think to when we would talk on the phone, but I thought that's not likely to happen for like a month or something. And so we ended up talking on the phone that night, and he was low income. He had a long distance phone type system, or not system, but you know what I mean, plan. And so I called him, and we spoke for about an hour, and it was just an incredible conversation, as you can imagine, speaking to your dad for the first time in your life when you're 45. When we were, when it was time to get off the phone, I just said I didn't want to say goodbye, and he sang me, I believe it's a Beatles song, "Hello." I'm probably getting this wrong, but I'll look it up and I could put that in the description. But he sang that song to me and said, because the song goes, hello, I don't know why you say goodbye, I say hello. Um, and that just made me cry. Like, to think I'd never heard my dad's voice before. And not only did I talk to him, but he sang to me. Um, it was just surreal. And so after we got off the phone, we started emailing each other, and he liked to write, so did I. And so we emailed each other almost daily for quite some time. I have like hundreds of emails. And we got to know each other, and he really wanted to share who he was, who his parents were. You know, I never got to meet my grandparents or my uncles because he had two brothers. So he wanted to share who his family was with me, and I was so grateful to learn about them. And he wanted to learn about me, so I shared who I was as a child, things I had been interested in, who I was now as an adult, and just everything. So what stood out to me about my dad was how intentional he was about life. And this may be because he was older. I mean, he was like 68 when I contacted him. So the sad thing is, he also, the same thing had happened to his oldest child that happened to me. And then he was also wasn't much in the life of his youngest child. And so, you know, he had a hard life in some ways, but he lived in a way, at the end at least, when I knew him, his goal was to live in a way that served others. And for one example, and I don't have a picture of this, I had a picture, but I don't know where it is now, but he made these portals. So it was like a Southwestern style kind of stucco portal, and then he would build a wooden gate. And he described the one he built at his house, and then later I got to see it. But in the portal, in the stucco part, he put like a handprint, and he painted it, I think it was red or something, and then he had a saying above it about how every time he left that portal, he would put his hand there, and the saying was, let me like bring joy or kindness or something to somebody else as I leave my home. So like, as I go out into the world, let me be of good, bring good to someone else while I'm gone. And I just loved that saying. I thought that was just an amazing way to live. Like, let me leave my home and do good for somebody else. Like, show up for someone else. It's not about me just running errands. I can still like make somebody laugh or smile or greet them kindly while I'm at the grocery store. You know, I just loved that philosophy that he had. We did get to meet, so I'll try to find a picture and share this, but my dad had lost an eye to cancer, and he liked to ride motorcycles. So he rode from Northern California to Tennessee on his bike, on his motorcycle with his one eye, and he camped along the way. And then he came and stayed with us for a few days. And when he came out, he got to meet my children, all but one. One was overseas for work. One is in the military, so he was out of the country. And before he came, I had sent him pictures of each child and then some basic information about each one. And when he got to our house, he walked up to each of my kids and said their name and something about him that he had learned from me. So he had studied, he showed me the paper. I had put it all on one sheet, and he printed it out. So he had a picture of each kid and then the information. And he had studied that so that he would know each of them by sight. And I was just like, that really touched my heart that he cared that much. Like, he could have been, I mean, can you imagine the shock of all of a sudden your daughter contacts you, and now you have all these grandkids in your life, and you're just like, what's happening? And then you go to meet them. But he just showed up for them that way. And that really healed my heart. You know, it was like, not only was he there for me, he was there for who was important to me. And that really, you know, one thing I believe, because I've had a lot of people say things but not follow through, I really believe in action over words. And he showed with his actions what was important to him, and how he was doing his best to be part of this family that he never knew he had, and how to show up as a dad and a grandfather and a father-in-law, even to my ex-husband. While he was staying with us, I think it was in May, yes, because he had his birthday with us, which was really sweet. But we were outside one night, and the fireflies were coming out, and he had never seen fireflies before, and he was so excited. It was just cute. It was like his inner child showed up for those fireflies, and my kids went, he was trying to catch a firefly, and one of my kids caught one and brought it to him, and just his amazement about the firefly, and just sharing that like childlike joy with my kids and catching a firefly, and just being in that moment with them was really sweet to me. And my kids remembered it too. They thought, first of all, they thought this dude was a total badass, because he came out to our house with one eye, with this eye patch, on a motorcycle, and they're like, what? This is amazing. So he's kind of got legend status with my kids now, which is kind of cute. I mean, they didn't get to know him very long, but he left a very strong impression on them, and they just thought he was awesome. Okay, so what this meant to me, meeting my dad, it answered a lot of questions about who I was, because I'm quite different from my mom, and I didn't understand where I got my love of reading and writing and research and like really digging into something. I didn't understand where that came from, because it wasn't like my family. And then when I met my dad, it answered so many questions, because he was also that way. When I went to his house after he passed, he had a file cabinet of different subjects that he was interested in, and he had all of this information in there, and he had a lot of books. He lived in like a small place, but he had like the whole living room was pretty much lined in bookshelves, and I was like, okay, this is answering a lot of questions for me right now. And he music, he had a bunch of albums, and we were looking through them, and he had all of my favorite artists, like a lot of my favorite artists from the 90s. I was listening to this U2 album. The Joshua Tree was like my album when I was in high school that I listened to every day, and we're looking through there, and he has that record, and I'm just like, that's crazy. And like the Cranberries and all of these things. And so just to see his curiosity about the world and music, and how he kept up with music. I mean, he was, when in the 90s, he was pretty like 40s or 50s or something, and he was still like keeping up with newer music, and just that interest that he had in the world, which I also feel like I have. What else did this do for me? I felt like a daughter for the first time. He showed me more love in that short amount of time that I knew him than I ever had from the people who raised me. And that was like so healing for me. I felt like just it made me feel like I mattered, like somebody cared about me, which I had never really gotten from, like I said, the people that raised me. He wasn't afraid to show his love for people. He wasn't afraid to say, I love you. He wasn't afraid to show up. Another thing, when he left to go on the rest of his journey, after he came to visit us, when he said goodbye, he went up to each of my kids, and he said something about his time with them that he appreciated. So like my oldest daughter made pancakes that morning, so he told her how good the pancakes were and how much he enjoyed eating the pancakes. So he did that for each kid, like something that they did together, and just like this meaningful thing. And I'm standing there watching him say goodbye to each of my kids that way, and I just felt it was amazing. Like I felt so seen and valued, and seeing how he valued my kids. Um, it was an incredible feeling. Like because I've seen them interact with their other grandparents, and I never saw them treated that way, like in such a meaningful way. Um, and just how much that meant to me to for him to like, because I have a lot of kids, so it was every time I got pregnant, it was like everyone was disappointed about it. My dad, I don't think he ever said anything to shame me for how many children I had. Instead, he showed up. He was grateful to have all of these grandchildren, these lives that came from his line, you know? And just the way that he treated them as valuable people was really incredible. So yeah, it was like the whole thing was very healing. And then at one point we were at kind of a touristy place, not really touristy. My dad liked trees because he used to be a logger, and he actually went to school to study forestry. So we went to this place that had a large variety of trees, and we were walking through there. And one of my children, one of my youngest two, she was like a toddler, and I've always been her favorite person. And my dad and I have a very similar kind of energy and vibe. And my dad wasn't like, you know how some grandparents are like, come give me a hug, hold my hand. He didn't do any of that. It was more like the kids could come to him if they felt like it, you know, and they all seemed really comfortable with him because he didn't push. It's kind of like how you are with an animal, like a cat that's kind of skittish. You just let them come up to you. And so we were walking through this place with all the trees, and my toddler walked up. I was walking behind my dad. My toddler walked from me to my dad and took his hand. And my dad just accepted her hand, and they just walked along. He didn't make a show of it. He didn't do anything. He took his hand. And so walking behind them with her holding his hand, it was almost like my little girl self was holding his hand, just watching them. And I was just like, I don't know. It just, as you can see, it's still the idea of it. I do have a picture of that somewhere. Hopefully I could find it and put it on here. But seeing them holding hands, walking together, and him not making a show of it, just accepting her presence with him, was so sweet. And for her to go up and want to hold his hand was like, okay, this child, like children trust people usually, like they know. And so seeing that she accepted him as her person and holding his hand, I was like, that's me, how I could have been as a little kid. So it was just very comforting. So anyways, now that I got emotional, I do want to say this kind of stained glass art, it's really cut glass, as my dad explained to me. When I went out to his home after he passed, he had that there. He had told me he made those. I think he did this in the 80s. There's actually a date on it with his name. And so I was like 7 when he made that. And I brought it home with me. And I like to keep it out somewhere because it just kind of obviously it reminds me of him, and also just like a guiding light in the window or something. I don't know, that's how I see it. And then when we left, when I was at his home, he had, so here's something that kind of brings it full circle for me. I never thought I was going to meet my dad in my life. So I got to meet him. I got to know him. Then I got to go to his home. And while we were there, I was with my older half brother, and we were kind of looking through things and like, taking what we wanted from my dad's place. And he had like family heirlooms, and now I have them. Like his grandma, I have my great grandmother's china. I have a quilt from the 1920s. I don't know whose it was, but I'm assuming my great grandmother's. And I have like papers. There's immigration papers from one of my relatives who moved to the United States from Scotland in like the 1700s, just things like that. Now I have these things in my home. And so thinking I was never going to meet my dad, and now I have things that were from my great grandparents. And then when we got ready to leave, he had some like old glass ornaments hanging up in his nook where he ate, and I saw one and I had to take it with me, and I hung it up on the rear view mirror as we drove back to Tennessee. And I'm holding it now. I'll show you in a second. But the reason it was significant to me is because it's a heart. And my dad was like so much into being loving and sharing his heart with people. And when I went through some really hard things after that, I kept this little heart in my pocket, like when I had to go to court and things. And it was like my talisman and reminder of my dad, and like that I could be strong and that he was with me. So I keep this, somewhere I could see it to remind me of my dad. And yeah, he is with me. And I think he would be proud of me for going through what I've gone through and moving forward in my life and making the best of my circumstances. And, I do a lot of things, not for my dad, because I am a Christian, so I feel like it's more for God. But I also feel like my dad is with me, and he would be proud of me for the work that I'm doing to heal from the past and to be of service to others through what, by using what I've gone through and the knowledge that I've gained. So that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to say I miss my dad. I love him. And I'm so grateful that I got to spend some time with him. And if you've gone through something similar and you would like to talk about it, I'm here for you. You can leave. I would love to hear your stories actually in the comments. I used to have a Facebook group and I called it Lost and Found, and it was for people who found out later in life or at some point that their biological parent, the person that they thought was a parent, was not actually their biological parent, and just the process of going through the work of, it's pretty traumatic to realize that. And then we shared a lot of stories of reuniting with our biological parents and just that whole process. But so if you've gone through something similar, I'm sure you kind of understand where I'm coming from and what it's like. And just, it's hard, but being able to, I'm not saying that my relationship with my dad was perfect or anything like that, but today, in honor of his birthday, I choose to hold on to the beautiful moments that I had with him and to be grateful for who he was and who I am because of who he was. And that I, like I said, get to know more about myself because I know who he was and who my grandparents were and who my great grandparents were, because they are my grandparents. And so with all of that loss, there is some beauty, because I did get to meet my dad. I did get to hug my dad. I did get to sit with him and talk to him in person. And I got to see him interact with my children. And that is a gift that I will always take with me. So thank you for listening. If you made it to the end, I appreciate you so much. And like I said, if you want to share about a similar experience you've had, I would love to witness it. And I know that there's a community that would also like to hear and support you as well. Okay.